Thanks for joining the True West podcast with David Fischette, where David sits down with business leaders, artists, creatives, and champions of humanity to discuss their explorer's spirit. If your true north is your sense of purpose that drives you each day and that thing you'll be remembered for long after you're gone, we believe that your true west is your sense of adventure, your curiosity, and the thing that makes you turn your back to the sunrise and head into uncharted territories. You'll hear stories of tenacity and courage that live inside each of us to follow our own path into the future we desire. We hope that you will be inspired to follow your true west today.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the True West podcast. Once again, coming to you from Power 214 podcast studios here in Dallas, Texas. Today, got a good buddy of mine from the event industry. He's the founder and CEO of Quest Events. His name is Lee Dunlap. Lee, thanks for being here.
Thank you. And the crowd goes wild.
So Quest Events, obviously, for those of us who have been in the industry a long time, we think Quest Events, we think drape, right? But obviously, Quest is now, totally mod furniture. It's form set. It's EventWorks party rentals.
Yes, sir.
It's now portions of Marquee.
Marquee, yes, sir.
Right.
As of 2 weeks ago.
Anything else that is in the
I think that's enough at the moment.
Oh,
I think that's enough at the moment, yes.
Got it.
There's always something in the background, so there's more to come, no doubt.
So growing up, Lee, did you consider yourself a creative guy?
Oh, created.
I mean, not created, creative.
I was created, for
You
sure.
were creative.
You know what? I would not consider myself an overly creative individual. When I say creative, I'm thinking more like, artistic, painting and things like that. Fun fact, I am creative from a music standpoint,
Sure.
so that obviously would be something. But probably a little more out of the box. I would tell you that I'm a little bit of a warped preacher's kid. So we're raised in ministry,
Right.
so kind of had a different lens on life for quite a long time. And I knew that I didn't want to be, and I'm saying it in quotations, in the family business,
Right.
going into full-time ministry,
Right.
pastoring a church or an evangelist or something like that. I always knew that I wanted to do something with people. I love people.
Right.
And so found a lot of joy in just visiting, getting to know folks. And so usually a pretty outgoing individual, but didn't really have a, hey, this is my true north. I'm going to start a company and rent drape. That was not something I just woke up one day and said, I've got it. I want to be the, top of the pyramid of drape.
Right.
So
The Drape King.
yeah, the Drape King. Yes, exactly. Shout out to Drew
So-
Whitaker there, by the way, for Drape
Yeah,
Kings.
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Drew is the Drape Kings. Yes.
Trademark.
Yes,
Drew Whitaker.
exactly.
Why warped? You said that warped past kid.
Oh,
What-
Lord.
What,
Well,
what, what was warped about
As
it?
you know, there's all the stereotypes that go along with preachers' kids, and I would
I've
say
married a
that
couple of them.
yes, we do have that in common. A lot of those stereotypes are true and spot on.
Right.
I use the word warped. I'd say the last 10 years, some of the things, there was a lot of legalism in the denomination that I was raised in. I don't fault my parents. Everything was a sin. So it's like, you can't do that. You can't have this. You can't go there.
Right.
Because it was like big things like, well, what happens if Jesus returns and, you're inside the bowling alley? Well, what's wrong with bowling? Well, there's a bar inside the bowling alley. And
Right.
if Jesus comes back, you may not make heaven,
And that would be a strike
Forget picking
against
up
you.
the spare. Yeah, exactly. A strike against you. Exactly. So everything was kind of a no in my life growing up. I have a fond memory of being allowed to go to my senior prom because there was dancing and music. And that was like, no, you don't dance. If you're dancing, I mean, that's out of the box. Like, God's not in that, And so it was a lot of arm twisting because
That's like,
I-
was that before or after Footloose?
it's after, so I'm not that old. Come on now.
Oh, it
But yes.
It came out after I graduated.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So I am
Yeah.
that old.
Yeah, for the record, I am 49. I do turn 50 in November, so I still claim in the 40s. No, there was so much that was no's, and there was very few yeses in how I was raised. And again, I have no ill will. I have nothing against how I was raised. I think it's true with anyone, you raise your children, right? And you bring part of your past with you and
Right.
all your biases or things that you were taught. And sometimes you don't ever, maybe question or have a different perspective. And so my upbringing was very unique in that sense. And let me elaborate just a touch more. So my parents were evangelists
What denomination was that?
Assemblies of God,
Oh,
AG. Yeah.
There you
So
go.
my parents were evangelists, and out of 52 weeks in a year, we traveled 48 to 49 weeks. We were in a different church in a different city, and a lot of times a different church Sunday morning, different church Sunday night. So if we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico, you're at First Assembly, blah, blah, blah that morning, and Sunday night, you're at Glad Tidings Assembly of God.
Right.
And so I was raised homeschooled a lot, and every week I'm in a different town, in a different city. And so I'm an only child, which will explain a lot about me on the warp thing.
Right.
But you walking into a new location, you don't know anyone. And so you were forced to be able to communicate, make friends. And so that was the world I lived in. I never stepped foot in a public school until ninth grade because I was homeschooled or went to Christian schools. But literally, we would go on tours, 2 and 3 week, 4 week tours. I'd come back to my Christian school. I might be in class for a week. Then my parents would leave for a 2 week tour. I'd go with them. And so my parents tried to have some semblance of a normal life. And so in ninth grade, I had some family here in the Dallas area that I would stay with so I could go to public school. And boy, was that a eye-opening
I
experience going
bet.
from that. So just, I don't know, if that answers the question
Yeah, it
from a,
does. And you know why members of Assembly of God are frown on making love standing up, right?
go ahead,
Because it may lead to dancing.
maybe lead dancing. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. That could go in all directions. Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway,
Some
all
of my
right,
upbringing.
yeah.
There you go.
So you, my question, the genesis behind the creative question is, you're in a very creative field, right? But
I
I
am.
feel like you're this guy with this brilliant business mind.
You're kind.
Yeah. And that has created this very successful, dare I say, empire, right? In a field that is filled with a lot of creatives, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember, speaking at conferences, and I would always, select my topic to be around the business side of running our business. And I would get, 6.5 people that would show up for that, right? Because everybody wanted to go see the fabulous flowers and how to schmooze, and right.
Yeah.
Those were all the popular things. And I'm like, people need to run your business like a business, right? And so you're such a shining example of, okay, in any field, if you've got the right business mindset, you can have a very successful business. So what was that like for you? What was the start that got you into this industry, that opened your eyes to the opportunity?
So as fate would have it, or the good Lord would have it, my parents would leave on tours. And so 16 years old, got my car, I'm driving. My parents at that point allowed me to stay by myself for a week to 2 weeks at a time. So think if you will, okay, my parents would leave for 10 days to 2 weeks on a tour. I'd be a junior in high school. They'd leave me a Discover credit card, $200 cash. They'd say, don't burn the house down. We'll see you in 2 weeks. I got myself up. I took myself to school. So I was kind of forced, looking back, like, I think of my own son, who now is 18 years old. Would I leave my son 2 years ago when he was 16? Absolutely not.
Right.
No offense, Marshall, but there's no way. So I'm in that. The church that I went to, there was a gentleman there that had a local audiovisual company. And so growing up on the road, I ran audio for my parents. So we would set up and tear down every week, every service. Okay. So I'd set up the sound system, tear down the sound system.
Did your mom sing?
My parents singers. Yep. My mom, both duet.
Got it.
So sidebar, they had 12 albums. They were on the Benson label back in the day. But so we would set up and tear down. So I was accustomed to the setting up and tearing down of audio and PA systems. Fast forward, I meet this gentleman at a church that I was attending at the time here in Irving, Texas. And I started working for him for $100 a week. And I would work 3 days a week, and I was the errand boy. And so he specialized in kind of higher end broadcast, Beta Deck, Sony 537, Sony 637.
Sure.
I'm dating myself here. I don't even know what it's called now, but I would pick up gear and drop off gear. And what I was shown at an early stage, at 18 years of age, was no one has all this gear and equipment, and different companies would work together. Well, some wouldn't. And so I would literally go and pick up a piece of gear. I'd put one of our stickers on it, go drop it off at someone else's, and they would think that it's, oh, well, that's so-and-so's gear.
Right.
Absolutely. So we were sub-renting from other vendors and doing business. And so my on-ramp to the corporate meeting and production world was first 3 years, from the age of 18 to the age of 21, was working, it says Andrew Walters, Andrews Media was what it was called back in the day. I think he's called AMS now. And so I'm forever grateful for the job that he gave me. I met him at church. And so that was kind of the on-ramp, was just doing meetings, and my environment was always, well, I set up a sound system for church. And then all of a sudden I'm thrust into wow, so companies pay money to rent a sound system, and companies pay money to, it was just a world, I didn't know that was out there.
Right.
And so those 3 years were very formative. One, just learning the industry. But two, also understanding kind of the general ecosystem here in the greater Dallas area of, who the players were, and, that's 30 years ago,
Now, were you still making $100 a week when you left?
No, I got a little bit of a pay raise,
Okay.
but still was very underpaid, of course.
So, but at what point do you make this leap to drape? When did drape become
Yeah.
sexy?
So,
The allure.
the allure. So it's funny. I'm a believer. There's good ideas and there's God ideas. So I'm going to get not super spiritual for a minute, but I was sitting eating Mexican food with some friends in 1998. So, and having been in the industry at that point for about 4 or 5 years in the corporate side, I used to pick up gear and equipment from all sorts of locations. And I always saw a need that whenever you have a corporate meeting, there was some elements of what we call pipe and drape, black drape, okay, 16-foot velour. And so I had this crazy idea, eating cheese enchiladas at Ninfa's, which was directly across from Six Flags. I wish it was still there. It's a beautiful place.
That was lovely.
Oh, it was very lovely. I had this crazy idea, and I knew that I wanted to have my own business. And I had figured out at that point, at the age of 22, that I did not want to work for somebody. I don't know why, but I just figured out, like, you know what? I figured out at an early age, business, if someone likes you, they'll do business with you.
Right.
If they don't like you, they won't do business with you. And so being raised a preacher's kid and people skills and being in different environments, if you were likable, like, wow, I like to do business with you. And so I had this crazy idea, and it literally came to me. And things in my life usually download very quickly. It's kind of like it hits, and within 5 minutes, it's like the download happens. And I said, I got this idea. I said, I'm going to rent high-end pipe and drape. And my two buddies, they're like, what? I go, yeah, but I'm going to do something that's not been done. I'm going to deliver it, and I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to tear it down 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the price won't change. And that was the original genesis of, okay, so of course I have no money. And so I told my dad this crazy idea that I had, and he was like, that sounds interesting, son. So my dad took out a home equity loan for $13,000. And I spent $13,000, and I purchased, I'll never forget, I purchased 270 feet of black 16-foot velour drape and the hardware to go with it, and a couple of hampers. And that was the beginning purchase. But I went to 2 customers here in Dallas that I had relationships with, and I said, I got this idea. If I buy this, will you call and use me? And they're like, oh, absolutely. That's a great idea. Yeah, we hate pipe and drape. We don't own enough. All of our stuff looks like trash, all the things, And so hindsight looking back, I found a niche in an industry that, ultimately when you do meetings and events, you got the audio guys, because the audio guys are, I only do audio.
Right.
You got your video guys, right? Oh, hey, I need you to set up that pipe and drape. They're like, no. I'm an A1, I don't touch that, that's beneath me. And so, that was really the beginning. And look, at this point, I'm almost 23 years of age when I start the business. And my original plan was like, look, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. I'd been married for 18 months, got married very young to Jamie, my much, much better half, I must say. And
Agreed.
I know you'd agree, yes. And my goal was to basically live in our 1-bedroom apartment. And could I afford my then wife, just got married. So she had a 1988 Honda Accord, had a $150 a month car payment. And of course, I drove the very cool Nissan Maxima, 1993, red, spoiler. Oh, it's amazing. And that payment was $350. So, when you're that young, my deal was like, look, I got $500 a month in car payments and my rent was $500 a month. But that was the thought was like, I'm going to do this. And so, funny enough, the first 6 months when I bought the inventory, the 2 people that said they would call me never called me. So the leap of faith that I took, so to speak,
right.
And so my first job actually took place in June of 1998 here in Las Colinas at Hackberry Creek Country Club. And I set up 70 feet of black drape. And that was the first job. My dad went with me and helped me. And I set up, 80 feet of drape. And back then I charged $7 a foot. No delivery charge, don't get any ideas, anyone. Delivery, it's more expensive 30 years later. So, but $560 was my first job. And the feeling of like, wow, okay, I did this. And so it was
so to be clear, so you didn't make any income for how long off of that $13,000 home equity loan that you're doing?
It took about 2 months for me to get my first job.
Got it.
After communicating, telling folks. And so what was I doing then? I was actually doing freelance work. And so I would work for all the different AV production companies here in town, and I would work for a day rate. And back then, day rate was $150 to $200. So, and I would set up breakout rooms. I would set up general session. I was kind of a generalist.
Sure.
I knew audio, set up video projectors, and all the, you remember the Sony 12.
Did you make the first payment on the home equity loan?
Oh, Lord, yeah. Oh, it was all on me.
Okay.
All on me. Yeah, because my dad my dad's a preacher. He's like, well, son, that's $13,000. I mean, you can make that payment. I'm like, oh, yeah, I got it, Dad. We're good. So we jumped in, feet head first.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh. So it was
feet and head first at the same time.
All time, honey. We just went all in.
In half.
Yeah, I'm Gumby. And that's who I was.
Clearly.
So it was
All
crazy.
Right. So how long did it take for that to go, okay, I'm making the payments with Dad, and I need to buy a little bit more? And
So what was interesting was I had a goal back then that if I could bring in $5,000 of revenue, that I could be my own boss. That was it.
in a year or in a month?
In a month, $5,000 a month is what I needed to bring in. And so I had a couple of months where we had done, 6,000, 7,000. And I'll never forget November of 1998, I did $9,200 in revenue. And I'm telling you, I thought my ship had come in.
Right.
I mean, I was, can I cuss on this or no?
Sure.
I thought I was king shit of Turd Mountain. I'm telling you, I was just like, yeah. And so that was November of 98. Fast forward, here's where it got good. I'm gonna go back to a spiritual standpoint. January of 99, the church that I was going to, they had a thing that they would ask any of the business owners to come forward, and that they would lay hands and pray for us, and that God would bless our business. So me being the warped preacher's kid on the road, I'm sitting halfway back in the church, and I'm sitting here with my arms crossed, and I'm slouched back in the pew. I'm sitting there with my buddy, and he was usually high as a kite half the time. I mean, good God. So he's sitting there, and he's like long hair, and he was like, hey, we ought to go get up there and get prayed for. And I was like, part of me was like, I just did $9,200 revenue. I think I'm doing good here, But of course, I'm not dumb. I'm like, well, yeah, you know what? The Lord will bless this. So I remember I got up, we walked down to the front of the church, and they prayed over us. Hey, Lord, there was probably 10 or 12 business owners there in the church. And the prayer was simple. It was just, God, here's these individuals, bless their business, right? Fast forward, that's January 4th or 5th. At the end of January, I had done $38,000 in revenue. I had quadrupled my revenue in 1 month. Twofold. One, God blessed it, right? Because I believe that, humble beginnings, and it's like, okay, Lord, here's my talents. I'm gonna bring them to you.
Thank you to your high friend.
Yes, exactly. And it pays to smoke weed and go to church.
There you go.
I mean, had it not been to my buddy Chris, it'd be like, you know, and he was just like, listen, you need to go down and get prayed for. I mean, what could go wrong, right? So you fast forward to all of a sudden it's like, oh, dear God. And it was like a light switch clicked on here in Dallas. And it's like everyone all of a sudden started hearing about me, like word of mouth. You know, the best advertisement is still word of mouth.
Yeah.
And it like wildfire. And I started buying more inventory because guess what? I don't have enough drape. I don't have enough hardware. And so I literally, that first year, I maxed out every one of my personal credit cards. And one of the things my father always taught me about, keep good credit, make your payments, you know.
Right.
And so here I am at this point, I'm 23. And somehow I had over $100,000 of available credit between my credit card and my wife's credit card. And I had $100,000 of credit card debt because there was no bank that was going to loan me money to go, hey, I got this great idea. I'm going to go rent drape. And they're like, what? Drape? Like,
Right.
yeah. And it was literally, you know, drinking from a fire hydrant. And we started buying inventory. And at the end of my first full year, which was 1999, I had done just under $250,000 in gross revenue. Again, I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment.
And did you have people working for you at this point, or is
I
it
had
freelancers?
I hired one person in 99, and the rest of my crew was literally freelance guys from church and guys that were in the college and career or the young adults,
Sure.
you know. And I'd call the guys up and be like, hey, look, and back then, understand, this is 99. So, you know, minimum wage was somewhere in the fours, maybe $5 an hour. Well, I started paying guys back then. I'm like, listen, I'll pay you a 4-hour minimum, $15 an hour. So $60 was guaranteed.
Right.
And we'd walk in and knock out a job in an hour. And then I'd take them, we'd go eat. And so literally I'm loading trucks, and all the while I'm still working out of my parents' garage in their neighborhood. So let's just go back to that.
Right.
I'm in my dad gave me his conversion van. And it had track lighting, blue carpet. It was sweet.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, I went in, I ripped all the couches out, the chairs out. So my delivery van was literally a Dodge customized conversion van.
Sure.
I mean,
sounds like my
call it the
story,
shaggin' wagon. It was
Yeah.
pretty exciting. Yeah. So we're driving up in this blue conversion van, and that was the first delivery vehicle. And so I just had a group of about 4 to 6 guys that I would call on demand, you know, working out of my parents' house. And it wasn't until early 2000, my mom had enough of the business. At that point, we're coming up on 2 years in business.
Right.
And I had destroyed my parents', you know, garage and just the trucks. And it was, you know, business was getting more and more. And, you know, most neighborhoods don't want you running
Right.
a business,
24/7.
specifically, you know, hauling steel plates and dollies and hampers and, you know, all hours of the night.
Right.
And so that's kind of the beginning, the genesis on how it, you know, started.
Got it. And so then you got your first office space, warehouse space.
Yep. First office space was in Bedford, Texas. And I backed right up to the TV studio for James Robison, Life Today. And so I could always roll up my door there, and I could see the ministry headquarters. So I felt like, you know, the Lord was close to me
Sure.
because, you know, and I love James and Betty. But I was like, well, I got James and Betty right here, and I'm over here hanging drape. And so I worked out of that first 2,000 square feet was my first little warehouse.
Right.
You know, there was no book or owner's manual to entrepreneurship. There
Sure.
was no, hey, this is how you sign a lease, or this is what you should look for when you do this, or I was doing all of it. You know, and so School of Hard Knocks, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the attitude was just like, I'll figure it out. You know, do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. But I surrounded myself back then and still today, which we'll get to later. But, you know, I think people should operate in their giftings and their talents, and then also be self-aware enough to go, you know, I'm not best in these areas, and surround yourself with a team of people that excel in those areas. And when you have that, it's like, okay, we figured it out. One of the lines we like to say, right? I don't have to be right. I just have to get it right.
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, you just got to get it right.
Yeah.
I don't care how we get to the answer.
Gotta get it right. During all this time, how old when you married Jamie?
We were 22 and 20 when we got married. So at this point, I am 24. Jamie is 22. Roll the clock back. My first 6 months of business, we found out that we're pregnant with my daughter, who's 25 today, Morgan. So I had the fear of God in me of, oh boy, this drape thing better work, because I had a $3,000 deductible back then. if you remember, insurance companies actually paid for pregnancies. They don't really anymore. Back then, I had a $3,000 deductible, and I was thinking, my God, how in the world am I going to afford, $3,000? Look, it's still a lot of money.
Sure.
But back then, it was just,
insurmountable.
it's like, oh my God. And so Morgan was born in May of 99. And so one of those pushes, in life that kind of like, was I got a kid coming, and I've got this business, and I've got to provide, and this has got to work. And so there's a healthy balance of confidence in what you do, but also there's a healthy balance of I had a little fear, like this has to work. Like,
did you finish a 4-year school? Did you go to college?
Did not. I went to 1 semester of college at UTA here in Arlington, and I dropped out after 1 semester because I couldn't walk onto the golf team. So truth is, I went to college because I wanted to play collegiate golf.
Got it.
I'm a big golfer. Got my master's shirt on here today. What a coincidence. Yeah, so I mean, that tells you my mindset back then.
Got it.
It's like, I'm going to go to college because I want to play golf.
Got it.
Okay. What do you want to do? I'm not sure yet, but I know I don't want to work for somebody. I mean, I had it all figured out clearly,
Our stories are very similar. Right?
Yeah.
I did a year and a half of college, right? And then started my business when I
My
was
wife
20.
went to more college. She went to more college than I did, and she wanted to be in fashion merchandising and apparel and blah, blah, blah. And, she gave up that when she met me. Of course, I mean, what's not to love? I mean, clearly. Right. Yeah. So, neither one of us had finished any of a higher education. I walked the stage, got my high school diploma and, went from there. So
I want to do the number comparison.
Okay.
You started with 260 linear feet of drape.
Mm-hmm. You're about to ask me how much drape do we own?
I do want to know how much drape does Quest own today?
Lord. God, I wish I would have known that.
Ballpark.
Yeah. I own, at this point, Quest has probably going to be in miles of drape. It's probably the best thing for me to do.
Right.
We own probably 700 to 800 miles of what you would call drape fabric.
That's
yeah. So I would say today, from specialty drape, Quest today is the largest provider of drape. No one has the depth and size or color palettes that Quest does.
in the United States or in the world?
For sure in the U.S. If there's someone else in the world that does what we do, I don't know about them. There's other folks around, but I'd probably say in the world. But we have, today we have 22 locations in the U.S. and we employ 1,100 people. And
still in the same 2,000 square foot?
Yeah, same 2,000 square feet. Yeah. The business has definitely, grown and has diversified, but we have over 1 million square feet of warehouse space across the U.S. and 1,100 wonderful people that make the world go round. And so sometimes you sit back and go, how did I get here? Right. And there's good things, right? And you can also ask it the bad way, right? We've all had experience where we go, my God, how did I get here? Right. And so there's,
I just blame it on your
exactly. Exactly. It's my buddy Chris smoking weed.
Right.
So, it's kind of crazy to go, wow, look what we're able to do. I would say what is the most gratifying for me personally? Yeah, the success of the business. Yes, that's amazing. What's amazing to me is that there's 1,100 individuals collectively that represent families.
Right.
And, there's easily, 25 to 3,000 people that have a living from an idea that God gave me, and so that's humbling. And so you wake up in the morning, like, what makes you get up? You know what? I get up. Yes, I love the industry. Yes, I love our customers, but, in my opinion, in any business, your greatest asset are your people.
100%.
And if you don't take care of your people, then you don't have a business. And have I done it all right? Oh, Lord, no. Have I run through enough brick walls or cinder block walls? Yes. My guidance to younger folks is try to avoid the rebar or the studs if you're going to run through a wall, because that's a little more,
that's where you cut up.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're a guy who owns a very large company with your partners.
Yep.
Right, obviously. That has what I think the the clinical term would be a shit ton of drape.
Yes.
Right. In drape that is used for live events.
Any and all live events. Yes, sir. That's a very broad, but yes.
Perfect. So when you have a company like that, and a pandemic comes around,
oh, geez,
that shuts down all live events,
yeah,
in an instant.
It's a great time to be alive.
What does that look like for the guy sitting at the top of the drape pile?
Top of King should have turned mountain, right? Exactly. Yeah. Great question. Let me answer it like this. Before the pandemic, hit, if you would have told me, hey, here's some things that could happen that we walk through, I'd have looked at you and said, you lost your mind. You crazy. That's not happening. No way. What took me at the time, 27 years. So what took me 23 years to build, okay, with the collective effort of so many amazing people. 23 years of work was literally brought to its knees in less than 90 days. And so when you fast forward to January of 2020, a couple of cases. I remember specifically sitting and shooting pool with my son at the time,
right,
and watching some news clips. And I was like, I was pretty dismissive of it. I was like, whatever. And February hits, and then March. Fast forward to March, and I remember walking into Mandalay Bay to the convention hall for, I think it was the TSE. Yeah, I think it was TSE. And walking into the trade show floor, I remember my wife Jamie was with me, and I walked in there and I looked around and I went, something's off. Something's way off. There was nobody there. Shows were shutting down. People were starting to leave. And it was literally that trip that I stayed at Mandalay Bay. And I remember turning on the TV, and it was the first time I remember President Trump and Fauci and the cabinet members in the press room and announced this is what's happening. We're going to, back then, remember, it was like, hey, we're going to try to slow the curve, right? That was
right.
We're going to close for like 2 weeks. And I remember watching the TV in my room, and instantly my wife was like, we got to get out of here. Like, they're going to shut down airplanes. So like I changed flights. We got on the airplane. I flew home. 2 days later, I was copied on an email for all of MGM Resorts, and the CEO for MGM Resorts sent out an email to all employees stating, we are shutting down all operations. And I was sitting in the movie theater at 8:00 at night when that email came in. Right. And I remember looking at it, and I turned to my wife and I said, they're shutting down Vegas. Like, Vegas doesn't shut down. You don't, are you kidding me?
Never.
And literally in March, we actually kept a dashboard where we would track canceled orders and jobs.
Right.
And so you can think, right, with what we do and where we fit in the ecosystem, most of our work is indoors, right? And so you went from 0 to 10, and it was a literal free fall. It was depressing. It was crushing. At the time, we had 26 offices in the country. And within a 4.5, just under 5 month period, Quest went from 26 locations. We closed or shuttered 12 out of 26 locations. We couldn't shrink the business any smaller without literally closing the doors,
Right.
And so we went from 26 down to 14 locations. The most devastating part was we had to let go over 458 employees at the time. That was crushing. I mean, we had folks that had been with us. I mean, we had folks show up at our warehouses.
Right.
I have a wife and 2 children. I can't feed my kids. And the kicker was for Quest, we did not, for a myriad of reasons, we did not qualify for any of the government loan programs. So Quest did not get any of the PPP loan money that a lot of our friends did. We did not qualify for that. And so we shrunk the business as much as we could. And I'll never forget, as much as all the people we laid off and all the overhead, we went down to 54 employees. 50 from at the time, like almost 500 employees, who went down to 54 employees left in the country. Right. And I remember the last person that I had to let go was my director of HR, and God forbid you leave me in charge of HR, I'll tell you. So, but she was an absolute saint and a trooper, and she knew. She's like, you don't need an HR director. You're down to 54.
Right.
We treated everyone with dignity. We had, and so many of those folks came back, obviously, as business came back.
Right.
But we literally came down to it where it was like, all right, my monthly burn was still over $1 million a month.
Right.
And so
after you closed,
after I closed all these locations,
Right.
let all these people go, we literally were at a place where, like I've never not paid my rent for our facilities. We had locations where it's like, I can't pay rent on my building.
Right.
I'm gonna have to redirect these dollars to paying the 54 people that are here. I have to keep the business alive.
Right.
And so our team, we had to make very difficult decisions. Things that you don't train for. You don't even let your mind go to a place of like, oh, well, hey, how do you shut down, a national company, and how do you, and so the whole industry was reeling. And I remember I looked at it and I said, well, we're down to, this many. Our burn's $1 million a month. And at the time, I'll never forget, I had $8.2 million in our operating accounts.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's see. I'm insolvent in 8 months.
Right.
I'm out of money in 8 months. And so again, it was
Because you
like
had zero money coming in.
Yeah, had no money, had no revenue. We had a 99% drop in revenue.
Right.
There's no one. And if you think about what we do, look, it's great to be niche and, hey, we have more drape and scenic and some specialty event furniture things. That's great. Well, there's no meetings going on. There's nothing happening inside. There's no business coming in. We literally, to survive, there was a hurricane that had hit here in the Southeast. And so back then with all the COVID protocols, we were renting velour drape, setting up in tents to create sleeping quarters, because back then they were thinking, oh, you needed to have an 8x10 and
Right.
try to keep people, because COVID doesn't go over the 8 foot, clearly doesn't work.
Right.
I didn't care. I'm like, you need us to set up 500 beds and have cubes for all the line workers? We'll do it.
Yeah.
We were doing anything and everything to stay alive.
Did you ever cut any of your drape up to make masks?
No, we did not. No, I would not recommend probably velour masks for breathing through. It's, looks good hanging in
For the fire retardant chemicals on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, let's not go down that road. But yeah, it was a very helpless situation, because you sit there and you go, okay, so being a Christian, and I was like, really, Lord? Like, okay, like is this how it's going to come to an end? Like, we had a great
read Job.
Yeah,
Did you
exactly.
read
Job. Yeah, exactly. Curse God and tell him to go to hell. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But it was, it was devastating. It was humbling. Because there's a scripture verse in the Bible talks about those things that cannot be shaken will be shook, okay, to the foundations. And I will tell you, 23 years in business, and look, it's human nature. Sometimes you read your own press clippings, or
Right.
you can quickly go, well, look at me, or look how much success we've had, and blah, blah, blah.
Hey,
And that's something,
preaching to the choir.
right. And that's something that I look at and I go, okay. And sure, there was a healthy amount of pride, good pride of like, hey, look, the turtle on the fence post, right?
Mhm.
He didn't get there by himself. That's my poster.
Right.
I'm the turtle sitting on the post. Look, I didn't get there by myself. But to see everything in your life work to be destroyed, it was humbling. Humble pie. It was just like, wow, like, really? And it was dark.
Where was the first glimmer of light? Not the moment where you're like,
Yeah.
it's going to be okay. But what was the first glimmer of light for you?
We did a lot of disaster work. Okay. I'm not going to say that the good Lord brought the hurricanes, but we did a lot of disaster work through September and October, which gave us a little bit of cash. It's like, hey, we brought in $400,000 or $500,000. Okay, well, my burn's 1.1. I still burned. Well, guess what? I didn't burn 1.1 million this month. I only burned 600,000.
Yeah.
Okay. We started seeing in different states, again, not a political, but certain states were more business friendly, and certain states were shutting down. Okay. And so having a footprint in the country, we had business that started happening in late 2020, really kind of Q1 of 21.
Right.
So it was good to have business in Texas. It was good to have business in Florida. It was good to have, business in
California?
Arizona. California, no, not so much. Yeah, no.
Well, it's so
It's so weird. No, we closed
Shocking.
all three: San Diego, LA, and San Francisco. We literally locked the doors. So, because at the time, I remember, Gavin Newsom got up and made some announcement and was like, "Okay, well, California is not going to be open anytime soon, so forget that." So, but we had a handful of states that literally kept us alive because so much of the other markets were still, our offices in the Northeast. It was hard. And so the glimmer, really, the Q1 of 2021, it was like, okay, like we started seeing some, but it wasn't really until late 2021 you started seeing like, okay, we're coming out of this.
Right.
And then obviously 2022 was, as everyone in the industry experienced, it was like, oh dear Jesus, 22 and 23. I mean,
Right.
it was
Keep
like,
up with it all.
yeah, you don't, and what
So
was,
how quickly were you able to start re-employing? And right, so you mentioned you have 1,100 employees
Yeah.
now, right? You were at 500
back then.
back
Yeah.
then, right? Down to
So
54.
we were able to start onboarding some folks very, very late 2020 into early 2021. So we had about 9 to 12 months where it was 54 people.
Right.
And we didn't really start onboarding by regions until business started coming back. And so some of the, California locations, had a great lunch, by the way. It was really good, Or I do my Buzz Lightyear when he's inside the wrapper and he belches and he's like, I don't remember eating that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so good. Albernaise, by the way, really good. So it was really early 21. We started bringing folks back on. And then as we got to the end of 2021, we had probably brought back close to 60 to 70% of our workforce.
Okay.
Because we had so much demand and we knew it was coming. And so we had enough cash flow that in preparation for what was to come in 2022,
Right.
And you have to understand where Quest fits in the ecosystem, we're not always the first person to find out work. Our typical, if we have knowledge of a job that's 2 weeks out, that's like a gift. So much of our work comes in the week of, and part of that's just like, oh, we need drape. Oh, we need some scenic. Oh, we need this, And so we use that time, that year to, if there's something you need to change in the business model, or if there's something you want to reconfigure, that's a really good time to,
Right.
do that when you really don't have the revenue. And so I think we were good stewards of our time and resources during that time. I would tell you, I have some amazing business partners in the form of the company's called TZP. They're my private equity sponsor based out of New York. And I will tell you that God could not have given me a better financial sponsor to partner with, because they understood. It's like, we're doing everything we know to do, right?
Right.
And they stuck with us, and they're still our partners today. And obviously, they're reaping the benefits, all of us are, of the business returning. And so part of that, going through that COVID season, we also started evaluating, are there other things we can do? Are there other products or services or things that Quest can provide? Because, I mean, there's blessings and curses, right? When you're known in the industry, when people think of Quest historically, like, oh, well, they've got more drape than anybody. Okay, yeah, we do. But also we have scenic. And so people know us as drape and scenic. And so what Quest looks like today, we can touch on that at some point. It's a diversification, and we've seen a big shift in just how customers spend their money.
But also in your diversification, because now you own EventWorks, was large, the largest tent.
One of the largest
in the
party rental, party rental and tent and structure company. They have 8 locations in the Southeast.
Right.
And so,
And then you just
Marquee.
picked up stuff from Marquee. Was part of that play looking at the pandemic and going,
100%.
oh, tents did really well.
Yeah.
Everything shut down, but
So-
tents were still used for other things.
So a lot of folks won't know this. So back in 2016, outside of Quest, my business partner and I put together a deal, and we acquired a business that operated in Nashville and Atlanta. In Nashville, they operated as Music City Tents and Events, and in Atlanta, they operated as Peachtree Tents and Events. We acquired that business, and I say we, he and I as individuals. It had nothing to do with Quest.
Right.
Back then, we had acquired that business and had both known that space and were very interested in that. That business through the years from 2016 all the way through COVID had significantly grown and had 8 locations. We had executed on several other acquisitions with that strategy. That business during COVID, all right? So in the financial world, everything is measured off of EBITDA.
Right.
We can have another episode on EBITDA charts. How exciting would that be?
And EBITDA standing for
earnings before interest, depreciation, amortization, and taxes, also known as free cash flow. We had that business, and that business during the pandemic performed better than Quest. Why? Well, they have, and I'm going to use the analogy of, they had more toys in the toy chest to rent.
Right.
What did they have to rent? Well, what happened during COVID? Everything went outside, right? Universities had outdoor dining halls. You had people that still wanted to have their parties, their events. Well, depending on where you were, at the time, there was periods of time where you had, you can't have more than 100 people in this ballroom or blah, blah. So everything moved outdoors. And so what we saw in that business was that business never went negative EBITDA, meaning they still were profitable. Now they lost 80% of their earnings, okay?
Right.
But they laid off 300, we laid off in that business over 350 people. But that business as a whole performed better than the Quest business.
Right.
Because what Quest does and what they do. And so what was interesting was like, all right, and in that world where you find large structures and tents, yes, you have tables and chairs and linens and all the items for caterers and such, but also there's scenic elements inside those structures. You have tent liners, you have ceiling treatments, you have, other ancillary scenic products that go in there. And so when you look at all of our photos, you see a lot of quote party rental, but also you're looking at the traditional Quest products. And so it was during that time, it's like, look, we're throwing anything against the wall. What's going to stick? How do we survive? What do we need to turn into? Right. And it was going through COVID. It was like, Quest, as it continues to grow, I think we need to be more diversified, and whether you believe that from a personal basis or, everyone should have diversification. And so today, with the acquisition of EventWorks, took place in November of last year, and then recently Marquee, that play really is bringing what customers are looking for. If when you do an event, if you don't have to call 5 vendors, but you can call 3,
right,
makes your life easier. Or maybe it's 2 vendors. And so if you can come to a location and you can get, whether it's your flooring, your tents, your structures, your tables, your chairs, your chargers, your drape, your ceiling treatments, your scenic elements, furniture, that's what we've really pivoted and gone towards. And so, had you not had a pandemic, I don't think you would see the shift in what Quest is doing in the direction we're going.
Right. So, this podcast is all about your true West, right? So that felt like a very true West moment for you, right? You had an insurmountable mountain and you figured out a way to navigate through that. Can you think of a time in your personal life where you had to navigate around something that seemed very daunting?
Yep. It does tie to business, but it's my personal life. But I early on I had a couple employees, and you heard the old Ronald Reagan coined the phrase "trust but verify," right? And so, not knowing what I didn't know, I had some individuals that worked for me, and there was some, and I won't get into great details here, but there was some things that were unethical that were done in the early days of Quest. And most people don't know, but there was a 2-year season in my life where I lost Quest. I left the business.
You left?
I left. The company was taken from me.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. Lost my company that I started. And I lost it through decisions that I made. I made it through trusting wrong individuals.
Was this like a poker game?
No, there was no gambling. No, this was, boy, I could give a whole other, we could do a whole other podcast on trust but verifying employees and stuff. But there was some theft taking place. There were some things happening that I had gotten to a place in my life where I had burned the candle at both ends for over a decade.
Right.
And I decided to take a 6-month sabbatical. Now, sabbaticals are good,
Right.
but also you need to understand if you're going to step away from your business, who are you leaving your business to?
Right.
And so there was a couple of people that it was left to that were not operating with the highest of integrity or goodwill or intentions. And so I was basically forced out of my own business because of shortage of cash, and the shortage of cash took place in the decisions that were made. And so literally, I left Quest in 2006 and was kicked to the curb. Didn't have a job. Lived in a nice house, but quickly came to a place where it's like, I can't live here. I can't support my family. And I actually had a 1-year season. God gave me a job at a bank. And so here's the guy that didn't go to college,
Right.
has never been in banking, but God opens the door with the COO of the largest family-owned bank at the time, owned by the Shelby family, Carroll Shelby Mustangs. So they owned a large bank here called Legacy Texas Bank, and God gave me favor with the COO. And so here I am a year into this of like, what am I going to do? Floundering, okay?
Right.
And I got a job at the bank as business development. And I worked in banking from 2007 until God gave me my company back in 2008. But everything you have taken from you,
Yeah.
everything you have that you thought that you knew, people that you trusted. And so it was a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Tested my marriage. Let me go back to that. Prior to this happening, though, no one ever wants, everyone wants to talk about the mountaintops,
Right.
but there's valleys. And I will tell you, from a priority standpoint in my life, the first 10 years of Quest, I did not have my priorities, specifically on the family side. I would leave my family for weeks at a time because I would be in California, I'd be in Florida. I was growing the business. I was meeting with customers. I was always on the road. Jamie, my wife, she couldn't even leave our oldest daughter with me because I was never around.
Right.
I was like a stranger, so here's my 2-year-old, 3-year-old daughter, and so we had a really rough patch. And it wasn't until I sat down with a Christian counselor and isn't it nice when you sit down with a counselor, and you're paying good money to get pissed off, and I'm paying this guy, I'll never forget, paying this guy $120 an hour. And he goes, Lee, and I didn't see it coming. He butters me up, clearly you're so good at this. And clearly you're so, look how this and this, he went all these, of course I'm like, oh, no, stop. Oh no, keep, And so he looked at me, he goes, let me ask you a question, Lee. He goes, at what point will God continue to bless your company at the sake of you losing your entire family? I looked at him, I said, say that again? He goes,
I don't like that question.
yeah, it pissed me off. Yeah. I said, what? He goes, do you think that God's going to continue to bless what you're doing if you end up losing your family? And of course, I'm sitting there and, Jamie's sitting next to me and she's crying, of course, because, marriage counseling, it's so exciting for everyone, right? Every sentence from her starts with you always or you never, right?
Right.
That's like the opening.
Right.
You always do this and you never do that. It's like, I'm over here yawning. I'm like, this is great, And I looked at him and he ticked me off. I said, what are you trying to say? And he looked at me, he goes, you can't do it all. And it's the first time I, had someone look at me and go, what do you mean I can't do it all? Because historically, it's like, if you tell me I can't do something,
Right. I have to prove
I'm going to move heaven and hell to prove to you, oh, the hell I can't, I'll knock you down. And it was that moment that he was like, you need help. Like, you need to bring other people. Like, you can't do this. Like, this is not sustainable. I mean, you might get this, but you'll have nothing. And so that was, rolling back to that.
Yeah.
I had that happen. And then literally I had 2 years of what I would call, my, when the children of Israel, keep going back to biblical,
Right.
the wilderness, right? You're like,
you're wondering.
it's like, I'm out here wandering, or for me, it was kind of like, I was like, I felt like Jonah in some ways. I'm like, is this my Nineveh? What are you talking about?
Right.
2 years, like I built my company. My company's gone. I'm not involved in my company, and it was like, what it was back then? It was too much of my identity. I wasn't Lee Dunlap, the father of 3 kids. No, I was Lee Dunlap. I'm the founder and CEO of Quest, and I took too much pride in that. And it's not who I am. It's what I do.
Right.
But it was a shift between that season of my life, having God, and I'll just say this, God sat me down for 2 years. He sat me down for '06 and '07. Oh, I can look back today and say it was the best thing ever happened to me.
Sure.
But walking through that, right, the valley of the shadow of death, yeah, no one wants to sign up for that. Oh, that's great. Oh, can I have another bowl of humble pie? This is so good. Let's just keep eating this shit. Oh no, I was livid,
Well,
angry,
I hear you. I mean,
because I was the victim,
yeah. And
right? In my mind, I was like, I'm the victim.
Yeah.
But the reality was, well, look in the mirror, dumbass. Look who you hired. Yeah. You put him there. Yeah. You didn't hold him accountable. Yeah. Were you wronged? Yes. But did you,
Right.
I look at all these things. It's
Did you
like,
steward it well?
yeah, it's like, right. Well, I looked at it and I went,
Yes, yeah, our
Sorry.
our stories are very, very similar. Obviously, I mean, that happened to you after 10 years of building your company. Obviously for me, it was 30 years.
39 years.
Right.
Yeah.
But similar, right? As I mentioned, leaving Go West in January of this year was ultimately my decision, but it was not the way I thought I was going to leave.
Yep.
And the events surrounding it were less than pleasant.
Pleasant.
Right,
Yep.
right, yeah. And after I was gone, there was no contact, there was nothing, and all of a sudden it was like, wait, this thing that had been my identity for 4 decades was no longer my identity, and I had a lot of hurt and pain and anger, especially in January and in February, and the way people were treating me, or
Yep.
the way or how I was wronged, or right. But sometime in mid-February, I had that aha moment of going,
Why
for the last 60 years, the last 59 and a half years,
yeah.
right? More than anything else, I identified my life more than being a Christian man, more than being a dad, more than being a husband. I was David Fischette, and I was Go West. I was Go West Creative.
Yep.
I created it. I was a CEO. I was a chief creative, right? All roads lead to me.
Oh yeah.
And to have God rip that out of my life in such a, what I would refer to as an ugly and unpleasant way, to the place where I'm, I've never darkened the door of that company since I've left. It's a great company, great people. It's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is the way it happened left such a bad taste in my mouth that I'm happy for their success, but I really don't want anything to do on a day-to-day basis with that, because it became so unpleasant for me, and God had to go see, that's not who your identity. I'm who your identity is.
I find
Your
it
family,
interesting,
right?
right? But I find it interesting though that God allows seasons and He allows things to happen for a reason. And most times when you're in the middle of it, look, I'm in the middle of it right now, just not in business, but on some other business matters. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, why, God? Like, really? Like, I'm almost 50 years old. Like, why am I dealing with this?
Right.
Why is this happening to me? And I will, I date myself here. I don't know if anyone else.
Never gonna outdate me.
I know.
so-
Okay. All right. So there's a old song used to sing in church, Andre Crouch. Remember Andre Crouch?
Of course I do.
Okay. Through it all, the song. And the verse says, I've had many tears and sorrows. I've had questions about tomorrow. There's been times I didn't know right from wrong. But in every situation, God gives blessed consolation that my trials only come to make me strong. And the chorus says, through it all,
Right.
I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. So it's one thing to sing it, right? And I just tell anyone, it's like, you sing songs, you say things, your words, it's power.
Right.
Life and death is in the tongue.
Absolutely.
And I have sat and listened to songs that I grew up on listening to, right? From a foundation standpoint. In some ways I have maybe not stayed on the straight and narrow in some ways, but I keep coming back to a true north from a relationship with Christ. And so I come back and go, okay, God, there's clearly a reason. Or another way to say it, it's like, He's rattling my cage, right? And when He rattles your cage, you're like, okay, well, you got my attention. What are you trying to tell me, God?
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how much you think, how gifted you are, or whatever. Brother, it takes, in a blink of an eye, And when you get your priorities off, you know, God can lovingly bring you back and go,
I've been right back.
hello, come back to here.
I
And
gotta tell you, I have the greatest peace though this year, right? And I'm looking at my future, kind of going,
peace that
"Thi-
passes all understanding.
right,
And
right.
you don't like, okay, God, like, why do I
Exactly.
have such peace?
But I think, at 60 years old, I'm starting over, and I've got a
Mhm.
3-year-old son, and yeah, well,
Yeah.
and I don't know what next year looks like, but I have such incredible peace because of where I am in my life, and I'm not dealing with, running the company and all the things that go along with that. So, I think it was
It's a walk. Right. It is a gift.
yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's easy.
No,
Doesn't mean that, you look back and go, wow.
I want to talk a little bit about, for the people that know you. I think we've touched a lot on, who you are as a businessman. And you've built this incredible organization, and and rebounded it through such a horrible season of the pandemic, and now your quest obviously is bigger than it's ever been at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What people don't know, people that are close to you, is you're an incredible musician. You're an incredibly gifted singer, piano player. Um, and obviously hearing that your parents were both musicians and they, went out and did, evangelism. Why wasn't that ever a path for you? Why wasn't that something that you looked at when you were 18, 19, 20 years old and said, yeah, instead of striking out and building a drape company, I'm going to go
Yeah.
be a rock star. Or,
Yeah. Rock. Yeah. Interesting question.
or, maybe a
So-
adult contemporary star.
Yes, exactly. CCM with all my friends watching. Thank you. I should have brought my old album cover to put on here. Here's what I look like. Um, I had a couple of opportunities from the age of 18 to the age of 21 to pursue the Christian music world. Had a lot of friends. I still today have a lot of friends that are, household names in the Christian music world. The two opportunities that I passed on, I did not have a peace about it, and it was a door that I felt like needed to be closed, and so I passed on those opportunities. I feel like you don't have to be on staff at a church to be in ministry.
100% agree.
Okay. I used to think that if you're in ministry, then you had to work for a church or you have to be an evangelist. That was
Right.
just, how it was like, well, I will tell you the truth today is that I run across people today in environments and locations that some of these folks will never darken the door of a church, right? Because if you really look at it, people talk about the hands and feet of Jesus. Well, we are, and we've got the two of us. We have two of our friends over here on the equipment over here. Well, there's four of us. We can have church here.
Sure.
God shows up.
Only need
Two or
two.
two or three are gathered, right? And so I sit and I look and go, okay, God, here were some opportunities. It was not the right time in my life for the season. Okay. And so as I started Quest, I've always stayed involved in church where I would sing on Sundays, and I'd had other opportunities, but I feel like my impact to the kingdom of God is greater, and God's given me a mantle, if you will, or a gifting in business. And so while there's part of me that looks back and go, well, what might have been? Isn't that an old country song? Little Texas. Yeah, there's no way of knowing what might have been. I look back and go, okay, you know what? God's given me a platform. And even though it's not the traditional way of, hey, I put out albums or hey, I'm on tour with, other people, I've been okay with that. But then there are days and there are times that I'm in functions or I'm participating or I'm doing something. And I wonder, it's like, did I really use, did I miss it? Did I miss the boat? Did I, should I have gone that direction? It's not often, but that does cross my mind. And I say, okay, Lord, you've given me this lane and I'm going to make sure that I operate in that lane. But when God tells me to do things and bless others, I do those things. But, I still sing. We put together once a month. We have a corporate night of worship that we do here in McKinney, Texas, at Adriatica. It's a village, it's a Croatian village at Belladonna Chapel. And a friend of mine, we just come together once a month. It's an hour and a half. And so that's my outlet,
That's awesome.
where we just have corporate praise and worship. It's not sponsored by a church. It's not a church service. It's just, Christ followers that want to come to a location, sit down and sit in the presence of God. And as busy as I get, it's very hard for me to sit still, right? And God speaks in a lot of ways. He can speak through noise and he can speak through pains and all, but when you can settle yourself and be still, right? Bible talks about when you've done all you know to do, stand. That's real hard for me. I am not wired to just stand or to be stagnant or what I think is stagnant. Sometimes just quieting yourself and sitting still and go, okay, here I am, Lord. What do you got to say? And so that's part of the journey that I'm on.
So clearly you give glory and credit to God for your success.
100%. I would not be who I am. I would not be sitting where I am if it were not for my relationship with Christ and the blessings he has given to me. But it's because I'm a giver. I've always put God first. And I would just tell you, whether you're a Christian, whether you believe it or not, I'm telling you, when you put God first, never
Does it return void?
never does.
Talk to me about Jamie's role in your success.
I will tell you, God has given me a soulmate and a special lady. She went to more college than me, got married young, right? And I'm having our daughter, first daughter, early on. She has a full-time job. Has done an amazing job as a stay-at-home mom, homemaker. I used to say, well, your wife doesn't work when she's a stay-at-home mom. Oh no, that's a job.
Oh, that's a job, yeah.
That's a job that I couldn't do.
Right.
And I would tell you that outside of, God and his blessing, I would tell you that we wouldn't have the success that I've been blessed with, Jamie and I, had it not been for her because, yin and yang. I mean, Jamie, you spent some time with her, and I will tell you, the home life, she's kept things in order. She makes things happen. She has been an amazing mom to our 3 kids. So, fast forward, I've got a 25-year-old daughter who got married in May. That was kind of surreal, walking your daughter down the aisle. Jeez.
Here you had a great wedding planner too.
Yes.
My
Steve
previous
Kimball.
guest.
Yes, previous guest. As Steve would say, it was fabulous. And just a shameless plug. If you don't use Steve Kimball for any of your events, y'all are crazy because that guy is amazing. 20 years he's been a customer. So
Yeah.
it was real easy for me. It's like, Steve's going to do the wedding.
Yeah.
She has been, she's as equal as I am in the success of it. Because if you don't have home base covered in your kids and you don't have a foundation,
Sure.
you don't have a home, how can I travel? How could I do what I've been able to do? And so it's been a great ride.
Yeah.
Very blessed. Been married 27 years.
Man.
And when I say my much better half. So
Where's Lee Dunlap in 10 years?
God almighty, I hope I'm still alive. Wow, 10 years. Fast forward, I'm 60. You know what? In 10
It's the new
years.
40 I hear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm going to take your word for it. I hope I look as good as you. Good Lord. Well, that's, I have not really thought about that.
Do you still
I
have
don't-
Quest?
Yeah, my intent would be still involved in Quest. I love the company that we've built. I love the people. I love our customers. Look, I love this industry. It's kind of like the mob, right? Once you get out, they suck you back in, What we're able to do, what you do, I mean, it's so fulfilling. I mean, it's never dull, right? It's not a 9-to-5 job. I'm not knocking a 9-to-5 job, and I'm not knocking, if your place is you work in a cubicle and you're fulfilled, cool. That's just not how I'm wired. So in 10 years, if I'm still running Quest, that's awesome. Maybe someone else is running Quest. Maybe my gift is, I enjoy mentoring. I enjoy pouring into other individuals. I love people. And God knows I've made enough mistakes. And so, if I can sit down and talk to someone, lots of lessons, it's like, hey, don't do these things. And if you don't do these things, the trajectory, it's much better that you'll
Right.
have some success. 60 years old, I'm sure I'll be a grandfather by then. God help me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope I'm still doing what I'm doing here. I do love it.
All right. So as we start to wrap up here, a couple of questions. So as you look at the world today and the things that may frustrate you exist in the world.
Is this a political question? I'm kidding.
No, it could be. It depends on your answer, right? If you think about the things that frustrate you, or as you look at the world, what would be one world problem you'd like to solve?
Oh, good Lord.
Light and fluffy.
I mean, that's
Light and fluffy.
that's not a light and fluffy question. That's like asking the Miss America pageant, what? I want world peace.
Right.
You know,
It'd be a great
yeah, I'm
search
not going to give you that answer.
Right.
Oh man. You know what? Here's how I'll answer that. Everything in my life has been earned. Nothing's been given to me. I have grave concerns of generations before us, coming up.
Coming after us.
Coming after us, yes. My concern, general, is just the entitlement. I think there's definitely a lot of sentiment around, I show up, put my hand out, what are you going to give me? It's like versus do the job, do best,
Right.
And then you're rewarded. I would hope that there's some type of a shaking or a reckoning of like, how do you get this next generation, or the next two generations to understand what the country is built on, and what we're doing. And, life's not just handed to you. You have to work, and other people. I think we get so blinded on a daily basis of easy just to get on the airplane, put in the earbuds, tune out the world, don't sit and interact with someone next to you. I think it's sad from a political standpoint. I think it's very sad how polarizing it has become. I hope that there's a time where people can sit down and have civil conversations. I enjoy the bantering. I enjoy having conversations. Just because you don't agree on all parts, it's okay. But why can't you sit down and have, constructive or just, and I have a lot of friends that cover the gamut, right? And I enjoy sitting down. And so I hope that, between the entitlement and the younger generation, I hope that they see the blood, sweat, and tears that folks like you and I have done and put out there and work hard. I want them to see that it doesn't just come easy. You don't just show up and it just happened. No, nothing just happens, right?
There's such a link, right, to doing the work and actually having commitment and appreciation for the things that you do, right? Because you're just entitled and just gifted. It means nothing to you.
Yeah.
There's no commitment to it. So.
I would say I had lunch earlier today with Steve Kimball, and we were discussing our latest acquisition of Marquee. And look, every business has its challenges. Every business has limps. Nobody is perfect.
Right.
Everyone makes mistakes. I got emails today I could show you of, you have a service failure, you have something that's gone wrong, something go right, okay?
Right.
But being able to sit down with Steve and the folks at Marquee and talk about, we spent so much time talking around the service, people will pay for service, right? And I just think that is so important in any and all industries, but in our industry, your people and the service you provide, that's your differentiator. I mean, you could have a older video projector, but if you've got the service and it still does work,
Right.
and that customer goes, you know what, the new shinier video projector, but I think these guys are a bunch of assholes.
Right.
But I like you and the service you provide. I'll take the
Right.
service can make up differences in any business.
But
But
you can always buy a new projector, but
Right.
that guy's still going to be an asshole.
right, exactly. Well, that's a great new gear. Yeah, well, he's still, yeah.
Yeah.
But you look at it and just, it doesn't take much effort. Something I drill into my kids. It takes very little effort to differentiate yourself from other people. And it starts with sitting down, looking someone, how many times we sit down, right? Someone's always looking down, or they don't project, or they don't engage,
Or they're on their
or
phone.
they're on their phone, or they do the little limp handshake. Why don't you square your shoulders? Why don't you sit back? Why don't you look someone in the eye? Yes, sir. No, sir. I can do that. Why don't you exceed their expectations? You start doing things like that, you're learning service, you're learning customer service, and it transcends any industry. Whether you're running the equipment that's in here, or we're sitting here talking about it, or you're sitting at a restaurant, right? Because when we sit at a restaurant, you always remember the waiter or the waitress.
Right.
They were amazing.
Yeah, if they were amazing.
Right. If they're amazing, you're going to remember it, right?
Right.
And it doesn't take much to separate yourself from just being average.
Be noticeable, yeah.
Yeah. And so to go back to your original question, what do I want to see? Man, I want to see the entitlement drowned away. I want to be able to see people sit down and be able to have just civil discussions. It's not healthy. And, regardless of what side you're on, it's even saying that sounds wrong.
Right.
What side are you on?
Right, because there's not just two sides. There's
there's
billion sides. Right.
Yeah, it's like,
right.
It's there's so much what I call common sense. It's just not common sense anymore. And I don't know, it's like, are we just being dummied down by the gadgets, by the TikTok reels, by the Instagram reels? Are we just dummied down? Yeah. Because everyone just takes the easy path?
My wife just saw a interview with the guy that invented the infinity scroll.
Okay.
You know what I mean by the infinity scroll?
I think I do.
Right? When your phone, you're just going to do this?
Oh, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
The infinity scroll.
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay. I use it. Yeah, I'm guilty.
But he is so regretful of that invention.
Because he looks what it's done to humanity.
Because Brett is taking hours and hours away from people.
Yeah, because it's easy just to do this.
Yeah. Right?
Oh, you like this one? I better give that a heart. Oh, you like that one? Yeah.
Yeah. So brilliant. All right, last question.
Hold on. So the guy that invented the infinity scroll, and you can go and talk about the guy that created the atom bomb. They both have regrets. Well, I hate what I invented, but
both
works.
Yeah. Well, screwed humanity.
Exactly.
What makes you curious today?
Oh, man.
Show's all about curiosity. So what makes Lee Dunlap curious?
I've never been asked that. What makes me curious? I don't know how to answer that. I'm curious. I'm a curious soul when it comes to, go back to business. I can't sit in a restaurant. I can't sit in a coffee shop. My curiosity, I'm always thinking about, well, I wonder how much you're paying per hour here. I wonder how much their cup for the coffee is here. I wonder how much that cup cost. I wonder if they realize that when they sit down and they put the 3 cream packets on the table and the person that comes and cleans it, only one was used and they just throw the other 2 away. Stuff like that drives me nuts. It's like, why don't you just put the cream back? Why are you throwing that away? Curiosity. Things that might be more pet peeves.
No, I get that. I'm very much the same way. I'm always looking.
I'm a little OCD.
The minutia and things like that. I'm always wondering why.
I try not to major in the minors, as I tell my father all these years. Dad, you can't major in the minors. And then it's funny. I find myself,
majoring in the minors,
getting wrapped around an axle around something. It's like, what really? Does it really matter? Yes, it matters. You can't do that to me right now. Right now. Yeah. Drop down and give me 10 right now. Push them. It's like,
all right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
This has been a lot of fun.
You're a busy man, but I appreciate you being here, Lee Dunlap. Thanks for being here on the True West Podcast.
I appreciate you. Appreciate what you do and who you are to the industry.
Thank you.
We need more Davids.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to everybody at home, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the True West Podcast. Coming to you live again today here from Power 214 Podcast Studio here in Dallas, Texas. Thanks for being here, and as always, stay curious.
Thanks for joining the True West Podcast. If you'd like more information on today's guest, please check below or see the episode notes. Until then, stay curious.